I'm still watching Hunter x Hunter and continuing the member request from Zega. This video will be about the Zoldyck family arc and the Heaven's Arena arc. I'm still really enjoying the show over the holiday. I'm actually already finished the York New City arc and the Greed Island arc. I'm not going to get into those arcs in this video, but I will say the Zoldyck family arc has been kind of irrelevant, at least so far, since it was in the show. And the Heaven's Arena arc I thought was a much better training arc than the Greed Island arc. I thought the Zoldyck family arc did a pretty good job of just showing how isolated Kahlua was his whole life. You can actually see his background, even though it hasn't been a super relevant plot point since then. It does a lot of neat little things where you can see why he's so strong and how strong his family is compared to other people, where they have the special entrance that Kurapika, Leorio, and Gon had to train a little bit to even open the doors by themselves. And then you obviously have the whole kind of ruthless assassin side where they have the front door set up to let people through to get eaten by a big ass monster. You also get to see that even the butlers are super fast and presumably pretty strong. And again, the show's done a really good job of this so far, of showing the hunters how strong they are, where Gon and his friends stand relatively to them throughout the exam. Obviously, the ones like Hissoka are still way stronger. And then the normal people, or the more normal people, Gon and Kahlua and Kurapika are much stronger than. So when you come here and you see that Gon and his friends are still weaker than the butlers, and the family's even stronger than them, it's a really nice, simple way of just showing scale and kind of where they all stand, at least right now as far as power levels. And something I thought was interesting about the arc is that you would expect Kahlua's dad to be super overbearing and kind of forcing him into this lifestyle because of his background and his training. But his dad just says, do you want to go see your friends? And if they're strong enough to make it through the doors, essentially, go ahead. And something else that the show does here that I think is kind of a gamble is to break up the main crew. And this happens over and over, where Gon and Kahlua decide to go on their own way to the Heaven's Arena to train, and Kurapika's on his quest for revenge, Leorio is going to do his medical shit, and they'll just kind of be back later. You know, in one way, I think it's smart because it makes it feel like each character has their own life, but they've all got their own path to walk. But you just never know how people are going to respond when you change the chemistry of the group dynamic like that. You're just left with Gon and Kahlua, and for most of the story, you've been with Gon, Kahlua, and Kurapika. I think it works, especially because the Heaven's Arena arc isn't super long, and then in that arc also Hissoka comes back, so it's not totally disconnected from the first part, but it's just one of those things that you never know. I hated the League of Villains arc in My Hero Academia when I was reading the manga, because the author's always sick and it's a weekly manga. So you go like 7 or 8 months in real life without seeing the main crew. It worked pretty well on the show because it was only 5 or 6 episodes. That's just one of those things where you don't know who you're going to lose along the way. And they all go do their own thing and they say, okay, we're going to meet back up in a few months at York New City at this big underground auction. So even though they're separate, you've already been given a timeline of roughly how long the train's going to take and when they'll all be back together. So we get to Heaven's Arena. They talk about how many floors there are, the power levels of each floor. So again, we see right away Kahlua and Gon are pretty strong because they get to floor 200 in like no time. But then once you get to floor 200, if you can't use Nen, which is essentially the main power in this world, you don't have a chance. And I thought this was a really smart thing to include, and it was obviously planned out from the beginning. When you do a magic system, it's always a gamble of how much sense it's going to make. I think this one's got pretty good rules. It kind of lays out neatly for you the 4 different types, what each of them do, and then the 5 types of kind of your specialty. And then again, a really nice system lays out in a hexagon for you. If you're natural at 1, you're okay at a couple other ones and bad at a couple other ones, or they're pretty much inaccessible to you. Really good magic system, or whatever you want to call it, to have laid out. A rule system for your fighting ability, because it makes it really easy to follow what's going on and how strong different people are. You do have the thing throughout the episode where they refer to Gon and Kahlua as like a 1 in a million talent. Essentially, a nice, easy way to write them off as prodigies, so we don't have to do ginormous time jumps. We can say, okay, it's been 2 months. Now they've gotten a lot stronger. I'm kind of iffy on that. It's not really this show's fault, but I also am tired of the whole prodigy just being an excuse to skip any kind of development or training or whatever. Now, the one thing I will say is that Kahlua and Gon are outmatched pretty routinely throughout the show, so at least it does that much. But then they also surpass people kind of quickly who've been doing this stuff for their whole life. Overall, I think this is a really smart way to do a training arc. It's only 10 episodes. You kind of get montages, time jumps, exposition dumps to explain the rules of the fighting. It doesn't really waste any time. And during their training, they're fighting and trying to use these techniques to learn them. So you're still getting action and things are happening to move the story along while they're training. It's not just a training arc, quote unquote. I'm not going to get too much into this, but I think this is probably why it seems like the Greed Island arc is maybe the least favorite arc for a lot of people. I would say so far, it's the low point for me. That one doesn't feel like it uses time expeditiously. It really feels like it kind of plods along. That one is 20 episodes. And story-wise, it just doesn't really feel like a ton is going on of any real interest for the most part. Some things happen. It's not completely nothing, but I definitely get the issues that people have with the pacing. And especially because the show to this point has been really efficient with the training and powering up. And this arc provides you with Hissoka's abilities as well, which is pretty interesting because you can see that he's powerful in the first part. Obviously, he beats Gon's ass. This one, you get an explanation for his powers. You get to see that he's pretty clever, and you can see how strong he really is. So this arc, even though it's 10 episodes, really fits a lot in. And we get little glimpses of Kurapika and Leorio as well. And at this point, too, it seems like it's setting up for Hissoka to be the main antagonist, even though there's plenty of other bad people along the way. And he's actually pretty helpful quite a bit throughout the story, just because he's taken a liking to Gon and Kahlua. Here's the image of the hexagon I was talking about before, and you get a nice, clean explanation about how everything's laid out and how it all works. And we also get to see Gon fight Hissoka, where you can tell how far along his own journey he is, since Hissoka, we know, has been waiting for him to get strong enough to fight seriously. And as much as I think Hissoka is one of the most interesting parts of the show, he also has one of the worst components of the show. And this is another one of those old anime tropes that I don't know if Hunter x Hunter started it, or if it was just one of the ones that made it popular, or what. But it's in a bunch of shit now, where usually one of the villains is like sexually aroused by combat. And this one doesn't hold back on that at all with him. It's another one of those decisions I just don't get. Like, just why? He's plenty interesting without that component. And it's not particularly humorous. It's mostly just kind of weird. Especially since you made your main protagonist like 12. So he's getting a fucking boner around a 12-year-old. But overall, I do enjoy their fight. It's good to see Gon is more powerful than he was. And it's a very clear way to show how far into his journey he is strength-wise. Because obviously, once Hissoka takes the fight seriously, he just fucks him up. And I did like the little twist here that this was actually a secret test for the Hunter exam. Because you had to be able to use Nen to have any real strength in this world. So this guy, Wing, was actually training them in part as an obligation, but also to make sure that they were actually powerful enough. And as of now, I think my criticism from the first arc of them not filtering more for personalities for the hunters still stands, because they specifically say in this arc, you have to be strong enough to fight criminals and really dangerous monsters. If an ideal part of the role or your job or whatever is fighting criminals, then personality seems very relevant. Presumably, even fighting monsters, people's lives will be on the line. So again, personality would be very relevant. To give some idea, in our world, if you interview for the FBI, you do a polygraph, you do multiple interviews, you get interviewed by quite a few people when you do. It's a pain in the ass. You do physical fitness test, aptitude test. There's a lot that goes into it, not just, can you shoot a gun? And even if you get through all that stuff, which I did not, but when you go to Quantico to do your final training, you're out there for 5 months living on a base. It's kind of like a military lifestyle. You're learning courses, shooting guns, training. And they specifically say that if you're in a relationship or married and you cheat on your spouse there, you get kicked out of the FBI like right then and there. And the FBI obviously works within the confines of the government. In this world, the hunters have free reign. So I think that criticism still stands as of now. And one other thing I will say is, since I only have the Chimera Ant Island arc left and the epilogue, I don't know what the show wants you to think about Gon going after his dad. Because not only is his dad like a deadbeat in the sense that he just rolled out, he actually is like concealing himself and throwing together pretty much an impossible string of tasks for Gon to follow in order to even have a chance to find him. I think it's a little bit questionable, one, logistically, and how much sense that it makes. But two, like if this show is going to be a happy reunion between Gon and Jing, you kind of don't want him to be a complete piece of shit, which is sort of how it's setting up. But yeah, overall, I thought these 2 little arcs were pretty good. Really good character development for Kahlua and background on him. A pretty solid training arc that sets up seemingly for the rest of the story. Turns out not to be the case completely. The York New City arc, which is what this leads into, has been my favorite so far. And I thought this training arc was much more diligent and effective with its use of time than the Greed Island arc, which pretty much boils down to a training arc. I know it's not 100% that, but overall, that's what it is. So yeah, I've really enjoyed the show. I'm about halfway through it. Good recommendation from Tyler. Keep it going. Hope you guys all had a happy new year. If you've seen the show, let me know what you think. Try to respond to all the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.